Okay, so earlier this summer, Mitch was hanging out in this garden here, and this is our little kitchen garden, and it's really exploded. And so Mitch was playing around with some experiments, which he's going to talk about in a second. And I think that what do you think the learnings were? Like, what were the experiments that you were running?
So yeah, a couple months ago, I added some thermal mass right here, and this tomato plant hasn't really grown all that much since then. And if you look closely, there isn't a single tomato on here. So that leads me to believe that I probably didn't add enough thermal mass. It's pretty grown down here, and there's any sunlight coming down here would have been blocked probably effectively by these plants. So it might have been a good idea to add some more thermal mass actually up here, although this is brown, so it might have done a pretty good job in and of itself, but adding some black materials around here. And I did it again on over here, but again, all of this would have just blocked any sunlight. So it might just be an iteration in orienting the thermal mass in a different way.
So overall though, if you look at this garden, and we can go and take a look at our other garden here in a second, this garden's done really well compared to the other garden that we've got over there. And I love when kids are running around. One of the best parts about being on the farm this year has been all the kids' laughter and all the playing that's going on with dogs, as a little interlude. So I think one of the main reasons that this garden did really well, so Mitch tried to enhance the microclimate by adding rock, but the microclimate itself was chosen specifically. We chose this garden in this location because we've got protection from the northern sky. When heat leaves the earth, it leaves relative to the earth's surface ability to see space. Space is really cold. Was it minus 273 degrees Celsius? 0 degrees, almost
you can get.
Absolute zero, yeah. And so when we basically put gardens up against walls like this, we cut the radiative losses from the earth in this particular little area by about 50%. So that's number one. The microclimate was good here. Mitch's attempt at putting thermal mass in here was really good. However, most of the benefit I think has come from the fact that we've got this house here. Number two, when you compare this garden to the garden we're going to go over to in a second, this has never been rototilled. So this garden here basically got made for the first time. It was grass before this. We dug it up, and I think the soils here are just generally better because they haven't been bashed so much. And so overall I'm pretty happy with this garden. I think next year it's going to be even better, and we might try and add some additional thermal mass behind here like Mitch was mentioning. And so I think the importance of this is to recognize that selection, so both zonation, proximity to your center of energy is really important, but also learning to identify microclimates, which comes through observation over long periods of time, is absolutely crucial to success. Let's go take a look at a garden that had way less microclimate, as well as kind of bashed up soils, and see the difference in the productivity of the garden itself. All right, so you can kind of see we've got some growth going on here, some kale, there's some chard right here, there's corn over in there in the foreground, and then potatoes. And they're doing okay, but when I look at this, this doesn't look to me like a garden that's vibrant. We kind of expected this, to be honest. This garden had been rototilled for 30 years. Our soils right here, even though they're under the mulch, are like concrete right now. They're really hard. There's not a lot of life that I can see when I strip back the mulch. It looks pretty poor. Looks like it's been rototilled for a long time. And so we're gonna keep adding mulch to this garden. I think I found a local farmer that's gonna let me clean out his corrals, and I'm gonna drop in a whole bunch of manure in here, composted manure, and so we should see a really big improvement in the garden next year. But my experience is that it can take 2 to 3 to 4 years to really get that soil life going in the soil again, especially something that's being beat up so much like this garden. This garden itself is going to be moved entirely to a no-till kind of main crop garden, I suspect, and so we're mostly going to grow potatoes, carrots, turnips, probably Jerusalem artichokes. We've got a few started out there in the background there, because this is again further away from our zone 1, so we don't want to have to travel here as much every single day to be able to maintain this stuff. Right now it's kind of a combination zone 1, zone 2 garden. Down the road, this whole space might end up becoming a food forest. I could see potentially having kind of a combination chicken system and food forest, which would tie really nicely into a zone 2 space. We'll see how it goes. We're still kind of in that design process right now. We've been doing a lot of observation, kind of understanding how we use the farm. And this is one of the reasons why when people get a new property, we encourage them to observe it for a year before they start actively using it. And we kind of jumped the gun a little bit on some of the projects, but having been in the game for a decade, you start to see patterns and you see opportunities. And so the way that I've been going about designing the property up until now has been trying to find locations for things that I know are not going to change, because I know there's only one place, for example, for our main passive solar greenhouse. This garden was already existing, and so developing this in this way made sense for us. That little kitchen garden that we were just talking about, again, made sense because it was close to our zone 1. The zone 1 garden that we're putting, like, there's really only one zone 1, and so how we design that isn't really going to change very much. And so you start to see these patterns, but if you're starting out for the first time for yourself, it really does pay dividends to take a year. And so the places where I've been slow to act and wanting to take that time to actually observe what's going on have been things like ponds. I haven't decided where my main corral is going to go. I've got some ideas. And kind of the larger pieces of infrastructure that take a little bit more observation to figure out where they make sense to be placed on the landscape. So hopefully you found that useful. If you're interested in overall farm design and you've taken a permaculture design course already, I highly encourage that you check out our Adaptive Habitat Land Design program. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes below. And it kind of goes through this order of operations and how we go about designing land and in what order so that you get it right the first time. That program is completely free, and it leverages Google Earth Pro, which is also free. And basically what you get is a file system that goes up into Google Earth Pro and helps you to lay out your farm design in an order that makes sense. Okay guys, hope you found that useful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below, and check out the links that I talked about in the section below as well, and we'll see you guys in the next video.